As companies expand to the cloud, asset visibility worsens. The Jupyter One Cyber Asset Management Platform helps you get it back. Jupyter One provides context, understanding, and visibility into your entire cyber asset attack surface. With over 150 integrations, including AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, and more, Jupyter One helps you answer complex security and infrastructure questions, understand the contextual relationships between assets, and build the foundation for your security program. Try it for yourself. Get started with your free Jupyter One account today.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cloud Security Podcast with Virtual Coffee with Ashish. And today is a big one. We're live on Twitter Spaces and we're live everywhere else on LinkedIn, YouTube as well. And today we're talking about Google Cloud Security Fundamentals. And who else to bring in for this? My good friend, Antoni. And for me, it'll be amazing to have some background music for get the vibe going. And I think Anthony gave me the perfect sound to make the vibe come in. So let me just bring that in. There we go. Oh, yes. Woo! Thanks for coming in, man. I'm so pumped for having this conversation with you. You and I have been talking for what feels like almost 2-3 years now. Yeah. And I could not think of a better person to bring onto the show, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me.
It's pleasure is all mine, man. I think I've got a few people coming online on the LinkedIn stream as well.
Very nice.
Hey, Vinny. Hey, Rama. Thanks for coming, guys. And I've got a few people on Twitter Spaces as well. So for people who are listening on the Twitter Space, feel free to tap the hand icon if there is one hand icon. What is the icon? You do Twitter Spaces more than I do. How do people request to come on stage so they can ask a question?
So they come on usually as listeners, and in the bottom left-hand corner, you can request to speak.
Perfect. All right, folks.
Like a little microphone icon.
Oh, perfect. Folks, you've heard straight from the mouth of the Twitter Space genius over here, or at least for now. But so there's a bit of a background to the whole Twitter Space as well. You and I used to do the Clubhouse, Google Cloud and cloud security things. This is kind of like a perfect conversation. So I appreciate getting a drink as well. Oh, where's the bow tie? There you go. Someone's already
bow ties are only for Wednesdays, Roger.
All right. So people who know your course and have done your course as well would definitely know a lot about this. So first of all, thank you for coming over here, man. Use speaker. Am I not using my speaker? Just making sure.
I don't know.
I think I am using my speaker, but I think let me know, Vinny, if I'm not coming in appropriately or unless that was a separate conversation. Cool. Let's kick off. So maybe a good place to start would be to have a good introduction about who Antoni is and how'd you get into this and what's the context of this bow tie and Google Cloud?
Sure. So how I started off, I originally started off in fashion, and I was a fashion designer for a little over a decade, and the fashion industry imploded here in Canada, and I had to find a way to feed my family. And make a long story short, a friend of mine told me how much money he was making in tech, and he mentioned databases, and he mentioned databases and salary, and I was like, I'm in. Where do I sign? So I went back to college, got a 1-year diploma, and came out with a Oracle 10G certification, as well as a Sun Solaris Unix certification. For those of you
Wow.
who are old school, yes. My first job was at Citigroup, and I was in the sysadmin world for a little under a decade. And then I got laid off, and I was really thinking to myself, what is it that I want to learn next? Because my skills were outdated, so I needed to learn something new. What skills can I learn so that way it'll bring me to the end of my career? And that's when I chose cloud. Originally, I'd started with AWS because it was the prominent cloud at the time. I think they had I'm guessing about 80% of the market at the time. And this was almost 8 years ago. And I've been working in cloud ever since. 4 years ago, I decided that I was getting all these certifications because I really love learning. And it got to the point where people were asking me, Antoni, how did you get all these certifications? And so I spent time with them doing lunch and learns, doing study groups, showing people how to pass the certification, as well as, really getting into this habit of learning, of constant learning. And since then, I moved to Linux Academy, where I spent a year there. And then I spent another year at Slalom Consulting doing live training. And for the past 2 years, I've been doing my own training, personal training, for people who are trying to get certified in Google Cloud. And I've created certification prep courses. Ironically, right now I'm creating the new cloud security engineer. And there was a new exam that was released early last year. And I'm trying to fill the void of, not having enough study materials to use in order to pass this exam. But at the same time, for those people who have taken my courses, they know how deep I go within each topic, because as well as I do, Ashish, a certification is amazing to get you into the interview, but you need to know your stuff in order to.
Really? I thought the certification kind of gets me the job.
So I've always had this mindset of I really want to teach people more than just the certification. And
Yeah.
that's always been my motto. And so on top of teaching it, I'm learning it myself. A lot of topics I don't know about. I don't know everything. Anyone who says they do, lying.
Or probably they haven't met you and I just wanted to ask the question. Probably most likely. But that's a great intro, man. I'm glad you kind of brought up the course as well, that you've kind of built the whole Google Cloud Security certification, at least engineer part as well. But I think I always get this question asked, and I wonder, what do you tell people when they ask you about what are some of the technical skills that you require for something like a Google Cloud Security engineer?
Oh, so it's a great question. Coming from specifically a security perspective, somebody getting into Google Cloud, first of all, you need to understand security from a platform perspective. So you really need to understand Google, how they implement security, because each cloud platform implements security a different way. So AWS would implement it different than Google Cloud. Same thing with Azure. And so I tell people, learn and understand the platform first. Once you start to understand the platform, then start to understand how to secure the platform at an identity level, at a network level, at a service level or application level, and at the data level. And I guess amalgamating all that together will really give you a sense of how to properly secure your environment, because you'll know how to do it at every single level.
Yeah. And to your point about, I guess, knowing the platform, the site, as well as, say, knowing the networking and at least the data side, do you find there are certain building blocks within GCP that maybe people can start with? And I think, by the way, what is it? Is it GCP or GC? See, I get people like us say, telling,
GCP.
hey, so it's GCP, right?
Yes, Google Cloud Platform.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm not too cool when I hear people say, "Oh, have you been using GC?" And I'm like, is that GCP? Like, oh, it's too long. And like, GCP is too long, so that's why I'm saying GC. Okay, fair enough. So, maybe we can also add on to some of the building blocks of what makes I guess if you're doing security in GCP, are there specific services or things that they need to think about from a foundational perspective within a Google Cloud environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first off, organizational structure. So you want to know how to organize your, I guess, your whole environment. So you want to understand folders, you want to understand projects, and you want to really take it to a level where you want to structure it the same way that you structure your organization. So if there is a DevOps team, maybe you want to put them in a folder. If you have a marketing team, you may want to put them into a folder as well. And then break off into projects from there, and use projects as a separation of the different types of environments that you want to have. Second thing is the resource deployment. So you want to understand where you are deploying, how to deploy, and do you want to do this in an automated way? In most cases, you do. And this is where something like Terraform would come in, or using a GitOps methodology. For those of you who are unfamiliar, that is having your code in repo, and when you're ready to deploy that code, it's all done through that code. So there's no hands-on specifically, and there's less chance of messing anything up with having people, hands in the pot. So another thing is authentication and authorization. This is a big one because I personally believe that security always starts with identity, and you want to make sure that you're giving proper access, the principle of least privilege. You want to make sure that you're using things like two-factor authentication, even down to things like keys versus tokens. If there's no need for security keys for your service accounts, then why aren't you using identity federation and using short-lived tokens? That to me is super crucial. And obviously the last thing that I see as a big building block is network. So you want to understand VPC, firewall rules, private Google access. You want to make sure that you understand how your network works. You want to understand routing, how you're going to route. What is your next hop? Is it to your internet gateway, or is it from service to service, or is it just one instance talking to another? These are the basic fundamentals
Yeah.
that I usually encounter, especially as I teach.
Mhm.
I mean, you can get into compute, but I mean, compute is it's getting massive now. There's so many compute services now that that it's really becoming a bit overwhelming.
All right. Wait, so that's an interesting one, right? Because it's funny how what you just mentioned as a building block for GCP ties in really well into the technical skills that you were referring to as well. For, hey, you need to understand the platform, the identity, the network, the data. At the same time, all this ties in really well into that. And maybe a good point, because people who are listening in on the LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as on the Twitter spaces of the world, they may be from background where they may have never deployed something in any cloud environment. And
Right.
I think from a building block perspective, 100% on the money as well. I guess every application would require some kind of an infrastructure as well, which is kind of like what you mentioned by compute. How different would this be to, say, someone who maybe we can take two angles. One is probably an angle of people who have never deployed anything in Google Cloud, and the
Right.
other may be from people who are coming from another cloud provider, which I don't imagine would be that different, but happy for you to kind of pick either or both.
That's a tough one. When it comes to deploying, just like when you're starting off with GCP, you want to start deploying things to understand how things work. So I always tell people, if you haven't spun up an instance, go and do it. Spin up an instance and try and access that instance. Usually you'll be blocked with some sort of firewall rule, a port maybe, and even trying to apply internet aware proxy. So, only have access through a specific IP or using a specific user. It's a great way to learn security, and a great way to start understanding GCP and why they have the things in place that they do.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, because on a day-to-day basis, a lot of security engineers would be tasked with doing something like that. And I mean, I guess there might be a very common task that they'll do it day in, day out. What about from a infrastructure perspective, doing security? Are there other things that they should be looking at from security perspective within their GCP environment that they need to kind of think about or turn on? Or I'm sure there's some services there as well that they can use.
So you do want to understand, when it comes to an infrastructure point of view, you want to understand the shared security model that Google has in place. So you want to know what you're responsible for. So, obviously you don't have to worry about physical security.
Yeah.
Google takes care of all that. But you want to understand things like, encryption. Who takes care of that? You want to understand who's doing the patching for my instances. You want to understand, when it comes to services from a PaaS model, from a platform as a service model, what does Google take care of versus what do you take care of? And this is always a great place to start, because it gives you a point of view of, okay, I need to take care of this, 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 and this with infrastructure as a service. But when it comes to platform as a service, now I don't have to take care of these things. And that's always great when you're starting out, so you can understand why you would lean more towards a managed service as opposed to a service that you have to take care of yourself. Because I mean, nobody wants to sit there patching machines, and nobody wants to continuously redeploy, right?
Yep.
So another great thing to look at is Google's implementation of the zero trust model. And they call this Beyond Corp. And this model enables secure access to applications and cloud resources with an integrated threat and data protection model. So you're looking at it from a security perspective of, how would I do this if I was Google? And this is why Beyond Corp was put in place, so that way Google could teach proper security posture in a way that is relatable.
That's so cool, man. So beyond core, okay, cool. I'll definitely check out people, or at least ask people to check it out. Then I've got so we're kind of going in the right direction, because now we feel we've built the building blocks. We've spoken about what kind of infrastructure people would have to deploy, and we also have thought about that what kind of technical skills people would require as well. But from I mean, I know you've done certification part yourself as well. So what's I guess what's some of the certifications that people can use to probably walk down the technical job path? But to what you said earlier, with the caveat that
Yeah.
it's like, just because you have done a certification doesn't really mean you know exactly what that needs to be done.
Yes.
And it's probably links in really well to the question that's been coming from Vineet here, which is learning Google Cloud Fundamentals is a good starting point. Any particular resources you recommend? So what do you recommend then?
When it comes to learning, right now, I personally think that learning GKE is your best option. And here's why, is because every employer out there is looking for Kubernetes skills. And with GKE, I mean, you are just, you're diving into a whole new world where there's so many things to learn when it comes to GKE. You know, they have their managed type service offering with Autopilot, where they take care of the nodes. But then there's also regular GKE, where you will manage the nodes. You also want to understand things like RBAC, so role-based access control. Yeah. And that is different than IAM access. And so it gets a little bit more granular as well. You're deploying containers. So now, what type of containers are you deploying, and how are you deploying it? You know, and this is where things like cloud repository, cloud build, binary authorization comes into play, where, you know, you want to be able to do it in an automated way, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're doing it securely. So you want to understand, am I taking, or is somebody on my team taking containers that are just posted in GitHub or in you know, on Docker Hub, and just deploying it without even looking at the code? Or are you deploying something that was done internally? And this is where binary authorization comes into play. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with binary authorization, this service from Google, and it is open source, but Google has taken it and decided to, you know, put their own spin on things, like they usually do, which is great. But binary authorization ensures that only the trusted container images that you have in your organization are deployed on GKE. As well, you know, you can use it on App Engine or Cloud Run for Anthos. And on top of that, you can, you know, with Container Registry, you can also do vulnerability scanning. So finding security vulnerabilities before the container goes out onto GKE. So I mentioned a little bit more than infrastructure, but these services go hand in hand, especially, you know, we're talking about security here. And, you know, when it comes to Kubernetes, because it's very complex, you want to make sure that security is top of mind, and doing it right from the start, right from the beginning, is always the best way to go.
And what about certifications, though? I think that those services are definitely great, and you can definitely start learning GKE as well, which I highly recommend. What about certifications?
So I've seen a lot of people try and jump into the professional cloud architect right away.
Whoa, straight away.
Straight away, because they're like, hey, I have you know, a lot of experience in AWS, so therefore I'm a professional, no problem. and then they end up failing. And this is because there are very minute differences between services, but all of these minute differences add up. And so it becomes a different platform because of it. And people don't understand that. So I always recommend people to start off with the associate cloud engineer and understand the basics, understand, how VPCs work, understand, compute engine at a deeper level, understand Cloud Shell and the fact that, you can run commands right from your browser. You don't need to do it anywhere else, or, just using the SDK. It's always great because you're bound to break something.
For sure. Find a new network rule that you didn't know existed as well.
But yeah,
So
so starting off with the associate cloud engineer, I always recommend to then go to the professional cloud architect, because there is a 60% overlap with the two exams. So
right.
on top of learning the basics, you're now learning things like Anthos, things like CICD pipelines. You're learning about DevOps. You're learning, more complex and deeper level services that you don't get to really dive into with the associate cloud engineer.
Yeah.
And then from there, you go straight into the security, professional cloud security engineer. So,
Okay, well, actually, maybe a good point, because I just realized while we are going through this, there might be people who would not even know what Anthos is or CI/CD pipeline is or DevOps. You and I just talking about as if like we're talking about, I don't know, Usher and someone who's more common. But
right.
so from I guess by the way, for people on the Twitter space, please feel free to tap the mic icon on the bottom left to come in and ask a question as well. And same goes for anyone else over there. So the question for what is Anthos and what is CI/CD and what is DevOps, so at least so to level the play field for people who may be listening and going, Anthony's just going on his own, like, I don't know, what are you talking about?
So Anthos is Google Cloud's answer to Kubernetes anywhere. Now, let me explain. When you have a Kubernetes deployment on premise, when you have a Kubernetes deployment in Azure or AWS, as well as GCP, how do you connect all of these Kubernetes clusters? The best way to do is by using Anthos. So this allows you to be able to deploy containers anywhere, to be able to control how containers work, how your workloads work, and gives you a centralized place where you can control it all.
Interesting. And I'm not gonna go into the whole Kubernetes thing, but I'll definitely encourage people who may be listening and to go on to the podcast website, www.cloudsecuritypodcast.tv, and there's a search icon on the top right or somewhere on the screen. Just type it in and just type in Kubernetes. We did a whole month of it, so get plenty of content over there. I'm not gonna go into what is Kubernetes in this one. Got a question from Roger here as well, Roger White. So it's like, so the GCP Digital Leader, should that be skipped as a certification? Actually, what is it, before you kind of tell us why it can be skipped? What is it?
So the Cloud Digital Leader, or the CDL, as we call it in the industry, is a certification that is the basics, the absolute basics. What is cloud? Things like it's more high level, as opposed to getting deep into the actual services, any coding. There's nothing of that. This is more of a certification that I would recommend to somebody who has no knowledge of cloud, or you are in sales and you want to be able to talk the talk with your customers. This is a great certification for that. So if you're planning on becoming an engineer, or you're an engineer in the space, then I would totally skip the CDL and go straight to ACE. And that way you'll get everything you need without having to go through the CDL. I mean, it's kind of the same when people look at the cloud practitioner for AWS, right? It's a great starting point, but if you are a leader, or you are in management or sales, or marketing, and you just want to learn the absolute basics so you understand what people are talking about when you're in the room, then that's definitely the way to go. Anything very technical, you want to look at the ACE and above.
Interesting. ACE and above. So, and what is ACE? Is the cloud engineer?
Associate cloud engineer. Yeah.
Associate cloud engineer. Sweet. So, okay, we have the basics covered. Would you say for people who are starting off today, probably have not done a single cloud, this could be a good introductory course for them as well?
Absolutely. It's
But,
like I said, it's really great for somebody who has absolute no knowledge of cloud. I mean, if you're coming from another industry like fashion, and you have absolutely no knowledge, it's a great certification that will guide you to understanding what is GCP, how it works, and the benefits around cloud computing.
Cool. All right, GCP Digital Leader, people, get on it. Cool. So maybe switching gears quite a bit. I guess we've been talking about some of the basic foundational pieces,
Mhm.
so that we could level the play field for everyone who's listening in. And let's try and go a layer deeper over here, just for a bit, in terms of the kind of implementation, because a lot of people are, I guess they would know about implementation in AWS, or at least an on-premise environment. They might not know what implementation looks like in, say, a GCP world. So I'm just making up an example here. If you have whatever project that you're trying to deploy, would have some infrastructure components, would have some application components, and obviously being a security fundamental talk, or at least conversation. What do you recommend? How would you go about doing it? And what are some of the things that people should look out for doing this in a Google Cloud environment?
Yeah, it's a great question. The great thing about GCP is the fact that everything is integrated. So if you take one service, it integrates well with any other service. And Google has done that purposely, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. If you're looking to do something like create a CICD pipeline, for those of you who are unfamiliar, CI standing for continuous integration, and CD standing for continuous delivery or continuous deployment, whichever you choose. So now when looking at things like that, you want to look at things like having, a repo to start off with. So having maybe a GitHub repo, or you want to use cloud repositories, and then it goes right into Cloud Build, where you can build your container. Once that's built, then it can be sent to straight out to a to container registry. And in container registry, you can have binary authorization, where, if it didn't come from Cloud Build, then it doesn't get deployed, right? Then going from there, you can then push it out to GKE. Maybe you want to do Jenkins pipeline. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Jenkins is a tool that is very commonly used for CI/CD pipelines. It does a whole bunch of different things. I don't want to get into it because we could spend
That'll be a whole hour conversation at that point, Jenkins. But now, cool. So you can use Jenkins if you like.
Yeah. Then on top of that, if you are, let's say you are in a highly regulated environment, so something like PCI DSS or a HIPAA environment, you want to use something like, if you are pulling in data from, let's say, credit card data, you want to be able to store that data, but you want to be able to store it both securely and within compliance. So you would run it through something like DLP, which stands for data loss prevention.
Yep.
Yeah. So this will discover, it will classify, and it'll protect your sensitive data by using different methods like de-identification methods, masking, tokenization. So, people won't be able to see that credit card data, but you will be able to query it. Like, let's say, Ashish buys something and the credit card data goes through. Well, now I can see how many times has Ashish used that credit card, but without having to show that sensitive data. So either masking it or even just removing it and putting a token there. And only when you have that key or token can you actually have that data put back and you can see it. So these are, you can do as simple as you like, but you can do some very complex things. And Google makes it easy to do that, which is really, really awesome.
And maybe some of the things that I get asked quite often, to your point about the regulated environment with PCI, what's the auditing equivalent as well for this kind of activity? I think the perfect answer for the deployment pieces and the security pieces as well. I'm curious, how because we do have a few auditors in our listener base as well. And for auditors who may be listening in, what are some of the auditing capability that they could be looking at? Like, what's a logging feature in GCP? Like, for me to know what Antoni did. Sorry?
Cloud logging.
It's even called cloud. So, but cloud logging does audit as well as, I'm just going to play dumb here. It's going to does audit as well as applications, or just audit?
So if you're looking for auditing specifically, you can use a SIM of any sort. So let's say you want to use Splunk, and you want to use Splunk, let's say, on-prem. You can easily do that. You simply run a direct connection from GCP to your on-premise environment, and you can have Splunk check either a cloud storage bucket, or you can have the data just go straight into Splunk using something like Cloud PubSub.
Oh yeah, we definitely had a whole conversation about Cloud PubSub on our first episode for this month of whole Google Cloud Security. So definitely something to check out. Awesome. So we kind of got into what are some of the other cloud securities. Well, I guess what are some of the other security services within GCP that people can probably look at that they could be open source as well? Because I think there's always a limit to how much a GCP provided or an Amazon provided service can do by itself. What are some of the other tools or open source services that people have to sometimes dive into to do the security?
So when it comes to open source, because Google already uses a lot of open source, things are kind of built in, but there are some other tools on top of that. So using something like Forseti, and this plugs right into GCP, and that's used for inventory, monitoring policies and policy insights, as well as enforcing specific rules that you want. So that's completely open source. Another thing is Cloud Custodian. I'm pretty sure you heard about that. Very popular open source tool that is a rules engine for cloud security and governance. Another one is Chaos Monkey, which is a Netflix tool. And that works great to, cause chaos in your environment and see where your where your environment is lacking. If you don't have any HA capabilities, you'll find out right away.
It would definitely test your boundaries on how effective and how reliable you think these systems are.
Yes. And one more that I wanted to recommend is called GCP Bucket Brute. And this open source tool detects open and misconfigured Google storage buckets. It's amazing.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Yeah.
So wait, so the whole misconfigured S3 bucket thing from AWS is a problem in GCP as well.
Absolutely.
So humans haven't really changed just because the cloud
Oh.
provider has.
No, and I'm actually waiting for Google to do it. I mean, they usually keep the user in mind when it comes to security. I mean, having security at rest by default, and having security encryption at rest and encryption in transit
Yeah.
by default, that helps out a lot. So you always know that the traffic within your GCP environment is always encrypted. That is awesome. And if you're looking at, it's not an open source tool, but I did want to give it a mention, which is, it's confidential VMs. So this is not just encryption in transit and at rest, but it's encryption of data in use. So I know, it's really cool. So the VM uses a specific CPU that has that allows you to have the same performance without that performance hit, because encryption takes a lot of memory to be able to, and a lot of compute to be able to encrypt. So there's a special chip that allows that inline memory encryption, and so you're able to encrypt on the fly as you're using your data. Absolutely incredible.
Awesome. And that's a good one to kind of end the question is. But by the way, that was the last question that I had. So if anyone has any questions on Twitter Space, feel free to tap the hand icon bottom left to ask it. But the same goes for the LinkedIn and YouTube of the world. Thank you for your question, Vineet and Roger. I've got 3 more questions, which are non-technical, and they are just to get to know you a bit more. And I think people would want to know a bit more about you beyond the bow tie as well. So I thought I'll put these 3 surprise questions in. The first question being, what do you spend most time on when you're not working on cloud or technology?
I actually decided this, actually it was last year. I decided that I wanted to take a more people approach to technology.
Okay.
And so I decided to take a role as a Scrum Master. For those of you who are unfamiliar,
I was going to say Scrum Master sounds like a very jiu-jitsu, kind of like a martial art guy, but sure.
No. A Scrum Master works in what they call the Scrum framework. Scrum framework is an agile framework, and so the Scrum Master keeps everyone in check with the framework, with the values and principles that they uphold. So inspect and adapt, always, transparency, courage, openness, all these human type scenarios and feelings that come up in a work environment where, people want to work in safe and happy environments where people can fail and they don't get reprimanded. People can choose what it is they want to work on. And a Scrum Master facilitates the space to allow that to happen.
Okay, cool. So Scrum Master, but outside of Scrum Master, like the whole technology, that's still tech. Don't mention what do you do outside of tech.
So outside of regular everyday work, I love to run and I love to cycle. Those are my two
Running
favorite.
and cycling,
Yes,
sweet.
running and cycling.
Because when you said Scrum Master, and I was going to play dumb over there for a second because I don't know how many people knew what Scrum Master was like. Sounds like Jiu-Jitsu thing, but I'm like, take the hint, man, take the hint.
So
So the second question, the second question that I have is, what is something that you're proud of but is not on your social media? It's going to be a hard one for you because I think people know about your fashion history as well on your social media.
yeah. So I'd have to say that I'm very proud to have been one of the selected few on Earth to have finished an Ironman.
Whoa, really? You finished an Ironman?
Yes.
Wait, recently or?
No, this was back in 2012.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that would be some hardcore training right there for Ironman.
There was a lot of training.
Yeah.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with Ironman, this is a long distance triathlon competition that consists of a 4-kilometer swim, followed by a 180-kilometer bike ride, followed by a full running marathon.
Yeah, we might have to convert from into miles for the American audience as well. I don't know what the miles are.
Let me see here.
Sorry, Canada and Australia both deal with kilometers, so I don't know what the miles would be for that. But Ironman in miles, people should definitely Google that.
Oh, 2.4-mile swim.
Okay.
112-mile bike and a 26.2-mile run.
That is a lot, but you could triathlon. But I've got that on my bucket list somewhere as well. So hopefully one day, I'll get those Ironman tattoo as well. I see all those people walking around with Ironman tattoos who have done the Ironman at least once. It is that big a thing that you almost, it's like it definitely tests every ounce of you. So yeah, cool.
So
all right.
There is 1% of 1% of the entire population that has finished an Ironman.
Oh, really?
Yes.
1% of the 1% of the entire population. Wow. Okay. That definitely narrows it quite a bit. So it even makes it even more. I want to do it even more now. There you go. I'm like, oh, what? So I'm sure it'll take a few attempts as well. Say Vinny loves a Scrum Master. There you go. He's commented saying Scrum Master. Cool. Last question, man. What's your favorite cuisine or restaurant that you can share?
My favorite cuisine is Italian cuisine.
Why am I not surprised?
So for those of you who don't know me, I am half Greek and half Portuguese, but I actually did some digging in my genes, and I happened to find out that I am 13% Italian.
Oh, okay. There you go.
And my wife is Italian, and I think what had happened was because this cuisine is so, I don't know, I love it, is because I love the way Italians live. They just, it's always people first, it's always family first, and work is always like, yeah, we'll work, but we want to live our lives, and I think that that's the best way to live. So I even make pizza in my backyard. I make my own dough. I have a high-end coffee machine. I love making coffee every morning, fresh ground beans and, just that aroma and really just taking the time to just slow down and eat and drink and be happy and laugh with friends. And that's like, yeah, just the whole thing.
No wonder you and I get along so well. So but it definitely makes me. I just imagine you in your backyard making pizza in an Italian accent as well. How's your Italian going? Are you learning Italian as well?
I actually am learning Italian.
Oh my god! I knew it. It's like allora.
Yeah, I
I
have.
knew it. I think it's funny how you and I think so much alike. I'm trying to learn Italian as well. So
Duolingo.
you never know, but you and I could just meet in Italy and just be talking in Italian and like
That'd be awesome.
obviously Italian in an accent, and people like, why are they so confidently talking in Italian with an accent? It's all it'll be hilarious. But that's pretty much what we had time for on this show, man. Where can people find you, and where can people connect with you to know more about the Google Cloud space and Google Cloud security fundamentals if they have any? By the way, they should hang out with you on Twitter Space as well, because you're hosting another one of these fundamentals later in the week, is it, or next week?
I am. Yeah, with Priyanka.
Yeah,
Priyanka
from
Vergadia. Yeah, from
Yep.
Google.
Yep. Awesome. So where can people find you?
So people can find me on LinkedIn. I usually hang out there, or I usually hang out on Twitter. You can find me there under Antony's Cloud, or you can just email me. For those of you who are old school, you can go to my website, training.antonyt.com, and yeah, you can shoot me an email.
Sweet, and I'll put those links on our website as well, where the episode would become live. So yeah, feel free to check out I guess the links on the website page. But thank you so much for coming in, Antony, and always a pleasure having you and having a conversation with you. You and I can go for hours. You and I've done like 2-3 hour marathon as well, so this is probably nothing compared to that. But I do appreciate you hanging out with us and sharing all the knowledge, man.
Thank you so much, Ashish.
No problem. All right, everyone else, I'll see you next weekend with another episode of Google Cloud. I think we're going to have a few more. So I'll see you with another Google Cloud security topic next week. Until then, have fun and enjoy your weekend. See ya. Peace.
Ciao.